Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Trust you had a great weekend. We had quite a quiet one. Read quite a couple of books. Enjoyed myself. Macro thought sterling rally finally starts to fill the Brexit gap with a decisive double breakout through trend line and 100-week moving average. Last trading at 135.54. Being dragged lower by the euro, in my opinion. But it's very expensive at these sorts of levels. I think a lot has been taken on trust. Home thoughts soaking in that last light, Mombasa by the mentalist. Mombasa, of course, is my hometown, and another photograph, Mombasa Old Town by M. Falme. I wish they'd clean it up, however. In the light of eternity, is it better to sell out and ride or stand up and walk? This is Elmore Leonard, Gold Coast. He is a fabulous writer, unputdownable, and I've obviously discovered a lot of his books in the Muthaiga Library. But the new discovery of a footprint that appears to belong to a man that trod down Crete 5.7 million years ago makes you realize that, when we talk about the now, it's such a small snapshot and such an enormous continuum. It may be an overstatement to claim that he invented a style of taut, fat-free comic writing, but he is certainly one of its best living exponents. One of the books I was reading, there weren't any textbooks on armed robbery. This book says at one point disingenuously, the only way to learn was through experience, or, you might add, from reading swag. For this is not both a textbook for armed robbers as well as a textbook on how to write about armed robbers. Then what is it? A theory of reality is more than the sum of its parts. Quanta, in his 1890 opus, The Principles of Psychology, William James invoked Romeo and Juliet to illustrate what makes conscious beings so different from the particles that make them up. Romeo wants Juliet as the filings want the magnet, and if no obstacles intervene, he moves towards her by as straight a line as they. But Romeo and Juliet, if a wall be built between them, do not remain idiotically pressing their faces against its opposite sides like the magnet and the filings. Romeo soon finds a circuitous way, by scaling the wall or otherwise, of touching Juliet's lips directly. Political reflections, my piece over the weekend, a screaming comes across the sky. Gravity's Rainbow is a 1973 novel by Thomas Pynchon, which is about the design, production, and dispatch of V-2 rockets by the German military. In particular, it features the quest undertaken by several characters to uncover the secret of a mysterious device named the Schwarzgerät, the black device, slated to be installed in a rocket with the serial number 00000. As the world watches Pyongyang, I cannot help wondering if Kim Jong-un has read Thomas Pynchon, which speaks of a screaming comes across the sky but it is a curve each of them feels unmistakably. It is the parabola. They must have guessed once or twice, guessed and refused to believe that everything always collectively had been moving toward that purified shape latent in the sky, that shape of no surprise, no second chance, no return. Last week, in response to enhanced UN sanctions, North Korea fired a ballistic missile over Japan and into the Pacific. The missile flew over Japan. North Korea is particularly unhappy with Shinzo Abe's Japan, and a spokesman said this: the 4 islands of the archipelago should be sunken into the sea by the nuclear bomb of Juche. Japan is no longer needed to exist near us. This missile went 2,000 kilometers over Hokkaido and was the second to threaten Japan since August 29. Kim Jong-un has been precise and calibrated in his response to President Trump, who said not too long ago, they will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen. He has been very threatening beyond a normal state. They will be met with fire, fury, and frankly power, the likes of which this world has never seen before. Our final goal is to establish the equilibrium of real force with the US and make the US rulers dare not talk about a military option. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un was quoted as saying by the state news agency KCNA. One of the strategies of the pre-regime change moment has been to demonize the other leader. And front and center in Kim's mind must be the image of Saddam Hussein being hung by his neck at approximately 6 local time on the 30th of December 2006, the day of Eid al-Adha, and of Muammar Gaddafi meeting his death after having been sodomized with a bottle. When you view things from Kim the Rocket Man's perspective, you might appreciate that far from being illogical, he is in fact being ruthlessly logical, and he is speaking the language his adversaries understand lucidly. 10 million folks in Seoul, just 60 kilometers from the border, 28,500 US soldiers are all in the line of fire. There is plenty of myth-making in our new media universe, but what is interesting is how singularly effective Putin in particular has been in his mission to break the monopoly of Anglo-Saxon global information streams. And one of those myths is that Xi Jinping, with some cajoling, can be made to effect a clean break with Pyongyang. Consider that Pyongyang is a buffer state between China and the US, and that Pyongyang is in fact a near-perfect geopolitical attack dog. The attack dog is not on a Chinese leash, but is surely aligned with a resurgent, rising China, whose aim is surely to eject the US and its allies from what it considers its sphere of influence. Just take a look at the South China Seas, where the US and its allies have largely capitulated, and the US is now left performing some half-hearted and quite forlorn FONOPs, once in a blue moon. North Korea, by lobbing those missiles over Japan, is seeking to prize Japan away from its US alliance, something that China is surely trying to achieve as well. When you look at geopolitical alignment, it is entirely unlikely that the West has anything to offer the Chinese that can compensate them for the loss of their hinterland, buffer, and instrument of attack. The combat efficiency and reliability of Hwasong-12 were thoroughly verified, said Kim. Kim added the North's goal of completing its nuclear force had nearly reached the terminal. What is clear to me is that North Korea has already established the facts on the ground and has a credible nuclear deterrence, something that neither Muammar or Saddam achieved, which led directly to their sorry demise. For those who've been commenting on a lack of a military option, there is a military option, McMaster said, adding that it would not be the Trump administration's preferred choice. The reality is that the price of the military option is just too high. War with North Korea is therefore a tail risk. Tail risk was thus described by Ben Bernanke as really bad outcomes. Investors reflexively reach for gold, the yen, and G7 bonds in environments where the tail risk is elevated. Kim Jong-un has proved to be very calibrated and precise in his ratcheting higher of his response. For all the bluster, Western powers have now been presented with the fait accompli. Kim has skipped into the end zone. And then I spoke with President Moon of South Korea last night, asked him how the Rocket Man is doing. Long gas lines forming in North Korea, too bad. That's President Trump. On that note, let me put a link in for you for the Elton John's Rocket Man. And if you haven't seen Gabriel Gatehouse's report from South Korea, we're going to the DMZ, that's worth a look at as well. Western contempt for China turns to panic, says Spengler. In the 3.5 decades since Ronald Reagan became president, by the best measurement of economic performance, China has soared from 10% the size of the US to 60% in 2007, 100% in 2014, and 115% today. If the current trend continues, China's economy will be a full 50% larger than that of the US by 2023. By 2040, it could be nearly 3 times as large. That would mean a China with triple America's resources to use in influencing outcomes in international relations. Such gross economic, political, and military advantages would create a globe beyond anything American policymakers can now imagine. American influence in Western Asia is eroding quickly. Turkey is now a NATO member in name only. It has bought Russia's S-400 air defense system over NATO protests, and it has allied with Iran to suppress Kurdish forces in Syria, whose success threatens to strengthen Kurdish independence movements in Iran as well as in Turkey. Suddenly, from the South China Sea to the Bosphorus, the United States cannot move without brushing up against Chinese influences, if not outright Chinese power. It's not quite the same as Yamashita's march across the Malaysian jungle, but if anything, the fecklessness, complacency, and incompetence of America's leaders exceeds the fabled stupidity of the British in Singapore. And in part, that was what I was saying in my piece, China Rising, which is linked there as well. The Economist pulling no punches, Rohingya crisis, final day with the Russians in Syria, 2.5 hours on the plane and 9 hours in the armored truck, looking forward to some sleep. That's a tweet from Sean Walker. He likes us, Chuck Schumer said. He likes me anyway. The Democratic minority leader, talking with glee to his Republican counterpart Mitch McConnell, was caught by a live microphone on the Senate floor. Schumer continued, "Here's what I told him. I said, Mr. President, you're much better off if you can sometimes step right and sometimes step left. If you have to step in just one direction, you're boxed." He gets that. The chair of the UK Stats Authority has written to Boris Johnson to express surprise and disappointment at his clear misuse of official statistics regarding the 350 million quid at the NHS. Saudi Arabia cited a plot to overthrow the kingdom as it arrests more people. A second Saudi official said he didn't believe the people arrested were behind a possible coup attempt, but said there are clear links between many of those arrested and the Muslim Brotherhood. International markets with the S&P at 2,500, and it's a record. Time to revisit one of our oldies but goodies. We'll just leave this here, David Inglis. Currency markets, let's take a look at that. Euro dollar, 119.22, and remember it traded at 2.5-year high of 120.92 earlier this month. Dollar index 91.87, Japanese yen 111.33, but there was a big move last week by the dollar. Swiss franc 0.9610, the pound, let's have a look at that, 135.49. So rose past 136 for the first time since the Brexit vote last week, after comments from BOE policymaker Gert-Jan Vlieger echoed the central bank's signal that the first rate increase in a decade could happen in coming months. Aussie dollar, let's take a look at what that is, 0.8006. India rupee 64.015, South Korean won 11.2613, the Rial 31112, Egyptian pound 17.65, and the Rand is a little bit softer at 13.149. Dollar index, I'll put up a 3-month chart. It's difficult to call this dollar. It's fallen precipitously. I just can't work out when everything is in the price. Euro dollar, this is via T commodity, last trading at 119.24. Gold, let's take a look at that. Where's that? 1315.87. We've come off from those highs of around 1350. Let's see how we behave. WTI, that continues to strengthen. It's crept a lot higher. US crude oil is at $50.60. Looks very toppy for me, but it's very difficult picking your spots. It's like catching a falling knife sometimes with oil. Emerging markets, Indian stocks just topped their recent peak and are now at an all-time high. That's from David Inglis again. President Mutharika seen here departing for Unga, which is this week. In Zimbabwe today, elite cohesiveness is lacking, and hence all the signs point to a disorderly succession. In Zimbabwe today, elite cohesiveness is lacking, and hence all the signs point to a disorderly succession. The ruling party is in or close to civil war. Former ZANU-PF supporters and the war veterans and in the faction of the party expelled in 2014 with then Vice President Joyce Mujuru are waiting to see what kind of ZANU-PF emerges after Mugabe goes. Opposition political parties are trying to form a coalition to challenge Mugabe and ZANU-PF in the 2018 elections, but the success of that venture is far from assured. The opposition parties have a long history of factionalism. In this photograph, we see the remains of the victims of Germany's first genocide. This is Namibia. These remains are in the American Natural History Museum. While some countries are plotting against Burundi, here Pierre Nkurunziza is seen cycling through the streets. In the midst of chaos, there is opportunity. This is art by Mary Sibandi of South Africa, the new Zeitz Museum in Cape Town. Barclays Africa Group this week said it's considering ending its relationship with KPMG. Pravin Gordhan, who was ousted from his post as South Africa's finance minister in March, slammed KPMG LLP after it withdrew a report on the country's tax agency that was used as evidence in a police probe against him and led to the removal of senior staff. The auditing firm said on Friday that its conclusions and recommendations in a report for the South African Revenue Service about a unit that allegedly spied on politicians should no longer be relied on. It said the evidence provided to KPMG doesn't support the interpretation that Gordhan knew or ought to have known that the unit was established and operating unlawfully. South African all shares up 9.85% this year. Dollar versus rand, last trading at 13.15. It's lost ground from that area where it was around 13. Egyptian pound 17.65. They're due to issue some Eurobonds this week. Nigerian all share up 30.26% this year. Ghana Stock Exchange is up 36.78%. so far this year. Tanzanian leaders' war for more tax puts economy in firing line. Magufuli's deepening dispute with companies he accuses of being tax cheats is rattling investors and dimming the allure of one of Africa's fastest growing economies. Since taking office in late 2015, Magufuli has been on a drive to increase revenue from natural resources to help fund its industrialization plans. His administration has passed laws enabling it to renegotiate contracts and audit foreign mining firms to sell stakes on the local stock exchange to increase transparency. Authorities have hit Acacia Mining plc with a $190 billion tax bill, curbed its exports and detained a senior employee and seized gems and questioned staff from Petra Diamonds Limited, alleging it hadn't paid its dues. In its bid to do some good things like trying to reduce the level of corruption, President Magufuli has taken steps that have actually gone outside of the formal rules. Nick Cheeseman. Tanzania is in the midst of an economic war, and if foreign investors want to leave, locals will take over their mines. They should not threaten us. They are the ones that should be scared. Financial markets have taken fright, with the Tanzanian oil share slumping 10.1% since the Acacia dispute erupted on March 3, and the company's shares nosediving 61% in London, where it's based. Are we asking what happens if an Acacia or a Petra leave? She said, the way we're carrying on threatens the sustainability of Tanzania. We need investors and they need us. Tanzania's recent actions may not be fully justified, Cobham said. I think most people would say they've crossed the line in a number of ways. 11th of July, I wrote a piece about the mining sector, and I said recent events in both Tanzania and South Africa's mining sectors are tipping both jurisdictions into an uninvestable and twilight zone. Zimbabwe's stock exchange last week hit record highs, helped along by an ongoing cash crunch that is leaving people with few options on where to invest their money. This happened similarly before. How NASA plans to scuttle the October 17th repeat election is the headline in the Star. I expect NASA to pursue an asymmetric response which will end up with a boycott. Kenya lowered its 2017 economic growth forecast to 5.5% due to drought and political uncertainty, towards less than 5%. I wrote a piece about the High Court ruling and how it was going to impact the economy 4th September, if you care to go back to that. Out of the 47 governors, 34 have had their victories challenged in court. That's the nation. Nairobi all shares up 23.36% year to date. I expect it to slide a bit this week. NSE 20 is up 18.76% year to date. And let me leave you with this image from Nakuru, which won the first prize at the DJ Memorial Photo Contest via Sachin Rai. Thank you kindly for stopping by.